For the Denver Nuggets, the 2025 offseason is not about chasing stars or tearing down their foundation. It's about addressing the strategic flaws that derailed what could have been another deep postseason run. The margin for error in a championship window is always thin, and for a team that features arguably the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic, the need to fix those cracks without compromising their identity has become urgent. Denver's second-round exit this postseason wasn't a fluke. It exposed structural weaknesses that were already visible to attentive observers throughout the regular season. The lack of consistent bench production, the over-reliance on Jokic to anchor every meaningful possession, and the absence of a reliable secondary scorer in key moments all became clear vulnerabilities once the pressure of playoff basketball ramped up. These were not isolated issues, they were systemic, and they demand serious attention this summer. The challenge, however, lies in the Nuggets' financial constraints. The team is operating near the second apron of the NBA's luxury tax system, a financial threshold that restricts flexibility, limits access to certain exceptions, and makes roster upgrades extremely complicated. Denver isn't in a position to pursue major free agents or swing for blockbuster trades without giving up part of their core. That means the front office, led by Josh Kroenke, must get creative and targeted with any moves they make. Instead of chasing high-priced names, Denver's focus this offseason must be on finding under-the-radar contributors who can bolster the rotation, bring defensive consistency, and provide scoring without disrupting team chemistry. That's a tall order, but there are players on the market who fit that profile and could make a meaningful difference in next season's campaign. One of the most talked-about targets is Bruce Brown Jr., who was instrumental in the Nuggets' 2023 championship run before leaving for Indiana in free agency. Brown's combination of defensive versatility, playoff experience, and familiarity with the system makes him an ideal candidate to return. He can guard multiple positions, contribute offensively without dominating the ball, and seamlessly fit into lineups with Jokic. If the front office can find a way to bring him back using the mid-level exception, it would be a significant step in the right direction. Another name that stands out is Chris Boucher, a long, athletic forward who has shown flashes of high-level shot blocking and three-point shooting during his time in Toronto. Boucher has never been a consistent starter, but his ability to stretch the floor and protect the rim makes him a valuable bench piece for a contender. In Denver, he wouldn't be asked to carry a heavy load, but rather to provide energy and spacing in second units that too often stalled during the playoffs. Veteran guard DeLon Wright is another realistic and intriguing option. Known for his ability to take care of the basketball, make the right reads, and defend both guard spots, Wright could give Denver something they lacked this year: stability and discipline in the backcourt when Jamal Murray sits. He doesn't need the ball to be effective, and his willingness to defend and facilitate could make him a quiet difference maker. If Denver wants to take a flyer on upside, Marvin Bagley III presents an interesting case. Once the second overall pick in the draft, Bagley's career hasn't panned out the way scouts imagined, but he still brings size, rebounding, and low post scoring to the table. As a limited minutes big off the bench, he could provide physicality and a scoring punch when needed, especially if the Nuggets move on from some of their current frontcourt depth. Players like Paul Reed, known for his high motor and defensive instincts, or Jayson Tatum, a gritty wing who can knock down open shots and defend bigger opponents, also fit the mold of what Denver needs. These aren't glamorous additions, but they are the kind of players who help close playoff games, especially when the margins are slim and the pressure is immense. While fans often dream of big trades and star names, the Nuggets' reality is different. This offseason must be about maximizing value, targeting veterans who understand their role, and building a bench unit that can support Jokic and the core in meaningful minutes. Denver doesn't need to overhaul their team, they need to reinforce it intelligently. There is no question that the window is still open. With Jokic playing at an MVP level, the franchise has an opportunity to contend again, but if they don't take steps to address the gaps, they risk wasting another year of his prime. The choices they make in the coming weeks will determine whether this team reloads for another title push or simply runs it back and hopes for a different result. The latter is not a strategy. The former, if executed properly, could be the difference between disappointment and another banner in the rafters. If the Denver Nuggets are serious about returning to championship contention, the front office will need to thread a very tight needle. That means maximizing the tools they do have: the taxpayer mid-level exception, veteran minimum contracts, and trade exceptions, and using them to target players who can play real minutes in a playoff setting. The goal isn't to shake up the core, but rather to support it with role players who are reliable, versatile, and ready to contribute from day one. One name that continues to pop up in league circles is Monty Morris. A familiar face in Denver, Morris was a steady, efficient point guard for the Nuggets before he was traded away in 2022. He has a proven track record of taking care of the basketball, running the offense when Jokic rests, and delivering under pressure. With Jamal Murray's availability often in question due to injuries, bringing back a guard like Morris could offer Denver a significant safety net without disrupting team chemistry. His comfort with the system and his strong locker room presence would be bonuses as well. Another veteran option with proven playoff chops is Larry Nance Jr. His ability to defend multiple positions, make smart passes out of the short roll, and space the floor just enough makes him a valuable utility player. Nance wouldn't command a huge role, but his presence could allow Michael Malone to experiment with more flexible lineups, particularly important in a postseason series where matchups constantly shift. For teams that depend so heavily on their stars, it's crucial that bench players can adapt to various roles without requiring the offense to run through them. That's where someone like Luke Kennard comes in. One of the league's most consistent three-point shooters, Kennard provides elite floor spacing, quick decision-making, and underrated toughness. While he's not a high-level defender, the gravity he creates on offense would open up cleaner looks for both Jokic and Murray. Denver's second unit often stalled due to poor spacing, and a shooter of Kennard's caliber could help eliminate that problem. Another potential addition is Paul Reed. Known more for his hustle than his stat sheet, Reed's energy, rebounding, and defensive versatility could give Denver something it has lacked off the bench: physicality. He's the type of player who doesn't need plays called for him to make an impact. In high-pressure games, that kind of presence is invaluable. He doesn't try to do too much, but what he does bring, deflections, contested rebounds, rim protection, is often what separates winning teams from the rest. While many of the more speculative options like Taurean Prince, Alec Burks, and Kevin Looney were also mentioned as possibilities, it's important to separate realistic contributors from names that may no longer match the timeline or system. Denver cannot afford to bring in players whose best days are behind them, or who don't fit into a ball movement heavy offense led by the most unselfish superstar in the league. The key to all of this, of course, is Nikola Jokic. His public comments about the team's lack of depth were not made lightly. They signaled frustration, yes, but they also served as a clear warning. If the Nuggets continue down the same path without making meaningful improvements to the supporting cast, they risk more than just another early exit. They risk alienating a generational talent who has so far been as loyal and humble as any superstar in modern basketball. Jokic will be eligible for a massive contract extension in 2026, but what happens this summer could influence whether or not he signs it. If he sees a front office committed to winning, not just maintaining the status quo, he may be more inclined to continue building his legacy in Denver. However, if the same issues persist, the narrative could shift quickly, and the Nuggets may find themselves in a very uncomfortable position with their franchise cornerstone. Adding to the urgency is the growing strength of the Western Conference. The Thunder have arrived early. The Timberwolves are no longer a punchline. The Mavericks, Kings, and Pelicans are continuing to build around young stars. There is no margin for error anymore, and standing still might as well be moving backward. Denver isn't trying to win one title. They're trying to build a sustainable contender. That requires evolution, not just tradition. President Josh Kroenke has publicly stated that the Nuggets are willing to make changes, but not at the expense of their team's core dynamic. That's a fair approach, but only if it's followed by action. Holding on to Murray and Porter Jr. makes sense in a vacuum, but not if it comes at the cost of flexibility and depth. The front office needs to find creative ways to shed salary from the bottom of the roster or explore trade markets for inconsistent performers who haven't lived up to their contracts. Denver's task this offseason isn't glamorous, but it is essential. They don't need to chase names or headlines. They need to identify high IQ veterans who understand playoff basketball, who will defend, shoot, and move without the ball, and who can play 12 to 18 meaningful minutes when it counts. Those minutes make or break championship runs. With Jokic still at his peak and the rest of the league catching up, the pressure is on. This is not a reset. This is not a rebuild. It's a recalibration. And if Denver gets it right, they'll be right back in the fight for a title. If not, they'll be left wondering how they let the window close with one of the most singularly brilliant players the NBA has ever seen.